You really thought you could marry me? The voice, sharp and cold, cut through the party's gentle murmur. There was Veronica Sterling, radiant in a champagne-colored dress, standing over Liam. Her eyes, which he once thought held all the warmth in the world, were now just ice. You really thought this was your world now? A man who has to save up for months just for one decent dinner? A cruel laugh escaped her lips, a sound he used to love. Don't be ridiculous, Liam. This was a cute little fantasy, but it's over. She held up her left hand, the diamond engagement ring he'd spent 2 years saving for catching the light. With a flick of her wrist, she slid it off. It didn't clatter on the polished marble. Instead, it landed with a soft, dead thud on the plush rug between them, a final, silent insult. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise. 100 pairs of eyes, all belonging to the city's elite, were locked on them. Liam felt their stares like physical blows. He saw Veronica's friends smirking behind their champagne flutes. He saw her father, Arthur Sterling, a man he'd once respected, turn away with a look of weary disappointment. Liam didn't say a word. He didn't beg or argue. He just held her gaze for a long moment, burning the image of her face, twisted by a casual cruelty he'd never seen before, into his memory. Inside, his world had shattered. The love he'd believed in, the future he'd worked so hard to build, was now just a sideshow for the rich and bored. He finally broke their gaze, gave a single, tiny nod, and turned. He walked out of the ballroom, out of the Sterling mansion, and out of her life. Every step was a quiet vow. He wouldn't be broken by this. He would be remade. Later that night, Veronica defended herself to her father. It was for the best, Daddy. He was unambitious. He didn't fit. Our family has a reputation. Her justification was a cold calculation of status, revealing that she saw love not as a connection, but as a transaction, and that injustice was about to light a fire. 5 years later, the next 5 years were a blur of work. Liam channeled the searing pain of that night into a singular, burning ambition. Heartbreak became the fuel for his comeback. He didn't just want to get rich. He wanted to build something that couldn't be taken away, something that spoke for itself. He co-founded a tech startup, Apex Innovations, with 2 friends in a cramped garage, a cliché he was well aware of. They ran on cheap coffee and 4 hours of sleep a night. They coded, pitched, failed, and pitched again. Liam's drive was almost terrifying. Where others saw roadblocks, he saw openings. He learned to speak the language of venture capital and acquisitions, a language far more powerful than the whispers of the high society world he'd left behind. Apex grew, first steadily, then explosively, disrupting the very industry giants that had once scoffed at him. Meanwhile, Sterling Enterprises was shrinking. Arthur Sterling, a man of old money principles, had failed to adapt. The company, once a titan of manufacturing, was now a dinosaur, bleeding cash and losing market share. Bad investments and a stubborn resistance to change had left it on the brink of collapse. Veronica's life had also lost its shine. The parties were still happening, but the laughter felt hollow, and the champagne tasted flat. Fear was a constant metallic taste in her mouth. She'd taken a senior role at her father's company, a title with no real power, desperately trying to project an image of stability that was crumbling from the inside. She watched her father's legacy disintegrate, haunted by the ghost of her own words about ambition. Then, the news hit. A hostile takeover. An aggressive, mysterious firm had been buying up their debt and now owned a majority stake. The Sterling family had lost control. A new CEO was coming in, either to save the company or to strip it for parts. The emergency board meeting was thick with a funeral-like gloom. The air in the opulent, wood-paneled room was stale with desperation. Veronica sat beside her father, his face a defeated shade of gray. She tried to look composed, a sterling to the end, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. The boardroom's double doors swung open. "Ladies and gentlemen," Arthur Sterling said, his voice raspy, "I'd like to introduce the new CEO of Sterling Enterprises." A man stepped in. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke navy suit that likely cost more than Veronica's car. His posture was one of relaxed authority, and his presence silenced the nervous whispers in the room. Veronica's blood ran cold. Her breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to tilt. It was Liam. But this wasn't the Liam she'd cast aside. This wasn't the sweet, earnest man with hopeful eyes. This man's eyes were like polished steel. He was a predator. And she realized with a sickening jolt that she was now the prey. He walked to the head of the table, his gaze sweeping across the room, deliberately passing over her as if she were just part of the furniture. "Good morning," Liam's voice was calm, but it held a power that left no room for argument. "My name is Liam Vance, and I am the CEO of Apex Innovations. As of this morning, Apex has completed its acquisition of Sterling Enterprises. There will be significant changes." He talked about restructuring, accountability, and operational audits. He used words like synergy and optimization. But all Veronica heard was the death knell of her entire world. It was a stunning reversal of fortune, a checkmate in a game she didn't even know he was playing. After the shaken board members filed out, Veronica cornered him in the hallway, her calm facade shattered and replaced by a frantic, disbelieving rage. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice trembling. "Some kind of sick game? Is this your grand revenge?" Liam finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For the first time, he looked directly at her, and she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Revenge?" he said, the word sounding foreign on his tongue. "You think my life's work for the past 5 years has been about you? That's the same narcissism that made you throw this all away." He gestured vaguely at the opulent but decaying office around them. He took a step closer. She instinctively took one back. The power dynamic had been flipped on its head. "Let me teach you a business lesson, Veronica. You taught me to know my worth and make good investments. So, I invested in myself. You called me poor. You were right. I was, but my greatest poverty was believing your love was a prize worth having." His words weren't angry. They were just cold, hard facts, the very stones she had thrown at him, now polished into diamonds and used to build the walls of his kingdom. "You said I didn't fit in your world," he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "So I built my own, and as it turns out, it's big enough to buy yours." He looked at her then, truly looked, and saw not the goddess he once worshipped, but a frightened woman, a relic of a dying era. He saw the same entitlement that had nearly destroyed her family's company. Liam left her standing in the hallway, her face pale with shock. He walked into what was once her father's office, the vast space with a panoramic view of the city he had now conquered. He stood before the window, not in triumph, but in quiet reflection. He held all the power. He could fire her. He could dismantle her father's legacy piece by piece, a slow, painful retribution for the humiliation he'd endured. That would be revenge. But the desire for vengeance, which had once burned so brightly, now felt like a distant, childish emotion. As he looked out at the sprawling city, the proof of his own relentless drive, He realized the ultimate revenge wasn't destroying her. It was succeeding so completely that she became an insignificant footnote in his own, much grander story. His motivation was no longer her rejection, it was the thrill of the build. When you finally hold all the cards, what's the next move? Do you crush the one who wronged you? Or is true victory simply moving on? He had the power to choose forgiveness, retribution, or something else entirely, a clean slate, where her future would be decided by her merit, not her name. And for the first time in 5 years, Liam realized he was finally, truly free. Liam spent 5 years believing success would make Veronica regret losing him. But when he finally stood above her world, he realized revenge was small compared to freedom. Some people destroy you to feel powerful. Others rebuild themselves so completely, they never need revenge at all. And that's the moment Liam truly won. For more interesting stories, subscribe us and share your bestie.